of a scandal dating back to last year's presidential election. On today's After 10, a closer look at the current political landscape and the remaining challenges.
Korea's two main political parties have been engaged in a confrontation surrounding the National Intelligence Service's alleged intervention in the 2012 presidential election. The leaders of the two parties had a four-way dialogue, but couldn't bridge their differences. After several meetings, ruling and opposition party leaders finally reached an agreement on December 3rd. They agreed to normalize the National Assembly operations starting December 4th and pass the government budget bill before the end of the year. We discussed the remaining challenges to diffusing the confrontation between the two rival parties.
Professor Hong, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, the National Assembly was normalized this week after weeks of political wrangling and a deadlock. Number one on their list of things to do is passing the 2014 budget bill.
Yes.
What are the prospects of them doing that by the end of this year?
Well, there has been a lot of political debate about, the normalization of the National Assembly. And two things have been in the minds of the people. First, whether they would really succeed in agreeing upon the new budget plan. And another thing is, a lot of legislations waiting to be passed by the Assembly. But after the four-way talk, which did take place a couple of days ago, and there's a big growing expectation that somehow these majority and minority parties will agree on some form of budget plan, actually. And there was a great concern about whether what will really happen, and that was a reminder of what did happen in the United States. But I think there's an increasing level of expectation and hope for the finalization of the budget plan for next year.
And there's a lot at stake if they don't do that. Tell us what's going to happen if they don't come to that agreement.
Well, we'll have a trouble, definitely. I mean, under the Korean Constitution, there's something called semi or pseudo budget system for the plan when there was no agreement for the new year's budget plan, and the Constitution said you have to do things that you did before. So all the budgets for the new plans or new businesses or new industrial sectors will have to stop. Something like R&Ds, something like welfare plan or other newly established plans for, especially for under the Park Geun-hye administration, will completely stop. About 40% of the whole budget will be at a stalemate.
So with that in mind, they've got to come to an agreement. If they don't, provisional budget, is that a viable option at this point?
Now, I personally do not hope that that can happen. I mean, 40% of the whole budget is a big trouble for all the people. And I don't think no one in the political arena could bear the consequences or burdens that will come from the public pressure.
So they've got to get this done.
Yeah, hope so.
President Park Geun-hye, her unilateral appointment of 3 government ministers on December 2nd,
exactly.
the chairman of the Board of Audit and Inspection, the Minister for Welfare and Health, and the Prosecutor General. On one hand, doing that, making these appointments well within her rights as president. On the other hand, it further enraged the DP, which was already, of course, enraged over a number of issues.
Exactly.
What are the two sides of this argument here, President Park's decision?
Well, apparently there's yes and no, and two positions have people there too. And it is not the first time that these sort of nominations made by presidential office has been tested and challenged in the rooms of the National Assembly, actually. And if I were, I did put myself in the position of the presidential office, I would feel like I have given you enough time, 40 days, and everybody now knows who they are. And these days we have put a little bit of very, very difficult political hurdle and personal hurdle to become a government official in a high position. So we have given you enough time, and it is in the discretion of the presidential office to make any nominations. if, and the responsibility for taking that person will have to be shouldered upon the presidential office, and that's it. So I can take someone, and I should be held responsible for them. But the opposition party, well, two reasons. First, they could, really do not like these people, or they may have doubts about the qualifications of the people nominated. And secondly, they may also have political motives, taking sort of advantage of the appointment process as a way of, raising another political issue or holding another political position as well. But eventually, and I think at this point, the presidential office made a decision to draw a line between political matters and administrative matters, I think. And then they wanted to give a signal that, it is in our discretion to appoint people. And we've heard enough. And so these are these. And other matters could be subjected to political compromise, but this is not. I think that was the sort of message or signal the presidential office was trying to depart.
This is one point of contention between the Saenuri Party and the Democratic Party. Hardly the biggest point of contention, though. That would be the allegations surrounding the National Intelligence Service, allegations that they meddled in last year's presidential election. Looking at a possible resolution, what is it going to take for a final resolution to be had on this matter?
Well, there's two sides. I mean, there has been a problem, yeah, definitely. And secondly, it has been at the source and at the very center of political dispute. And the political dispute represents all the political aspirations for the coming elections as well. And then also, it has something to do with a lot of prosecutions which have been done in the prosecution's office, and also a lot of intelligence activities also done by the NIS. So, in a way, it represents the expectations or strategical points of view for the coming elections. So that is the one element that this sort of conversation continues, to make its appearance on the newspapers. But another point is, it's a problem, and it's an illicit activity if the NIS keeps doing eavesdropping of the political people, and then also they are involved in cyber warfare illicitly, or they're involved in illicit intelligence activities. I mean, these things should be somehow put under the control of the National Assembly, I think. And National Assembly represents the will of the people in that sense. But the Both parties will continue to have a very hot debate on it, even after the agreement at the four-way talk. Still, this matter remains unsolved, and they decide to, continue to have a dialogue or conversation about it. So, this is really hot potato.
Former Democratic Party presidential candidate Moon Jae-in has hinted he could run for president again in the next election. And one day before Moon's announcement, lawmaker An철수 officially announced the establishment of a new party. Moon Jae-in has been spending his days publishing a memoir and holding town halls to communicate with the public. An has been working hard to lay the groundwork for the formation of his new political party. Moon and An were in competition to become the sole candidate from the opposition party during last year's presidential election, and now they are lining up for round two.
Moon Jae-in's announcement this week that he would be willing to run for president again. This is a man that ran last year in the election. He's been largely absent from view for the past year or so. The question is being asked, why now?
Well, there are several, or more than several, aspects to that question. First, the local election is coming in. And even though it's a local election, actually it's a sort of precursor. It'll serve as a precursor to the presidential election in the future. And then what it also means who will get initiative or who will be held responsible for the outcome of this coming election. So this is the time. I mean, whether you belong to the opposition party, whether you belong to majority party, this is time to make your presence. and to appearance as well. And secondly, well, there's an intra political party tension between so-called pro-no Moon Hyun people and the old conventional Minjudang people. And so, and there's a political struggle inside the opposition party as well, and this is the time to make his presence. And thirdly, well, there has been a lot of rumors and then signs of prosecutions about what they did under the Nomen, especially relating to the loss of presidential record. And this is time. I think his strategy would be to turn or convert the whole situation into a political one, and into and then change it into, bring it into the next level of another election mood.
I guess the underlying question for the DP, considering their approval ratings are rather low right now, is this the right move? Moon Jae-in, do they not need a new face to sort of step up and become the face of the party? Well,
it's a matter of complexity. I mean, there is Kim Han-gil and other, conventional minority party people, and the pro-North, No Mu-hyun people as well, and there's An철수 and other. So, I mean, they all belong to the sort of minority camp, but the point is, somebody has to take the initiative, and I think, and nobody's quite sure about what will really happen from the rise of the An철수 new party. Who will benefit and who will lose? I mean, that is the question. So I think these people are looking very carefully, trying to carefully look at the movement of the public opinion at this point.
You talk about public opinion, you talk about An철수. An철수 recently announced that he would be establishing a political party with eyes on running candidates in the local elections in June. Lots of polls out there. Most of them show, or some of them show, that An's new party stands at about 27% approval rating. That's about 2 times
Isn't it impressive,
of the Democratic parties. It is impressive, but it's also posing a lot of questions about what that means. What does it tell you that the approval rating is so high?
Well, after all, if we consider An철수 as a part of minority party, then well, the minority party as a whole did get 40%, and the majority party, now 새누리당, has 40% as well. So, I mean, first of all, that means that people are divided and they haven't made a decision yet. I mean, and secondly, well, An철수 has even shows even more range of support than in the DP, actually, which means that people have expectations for new things and people have expectations for change. I mean, it is somehow showing the fact that people became fed up with understreet campaign, understreet struggle, and all the signs of non-disagreement, all the signs of challenge and dischallenge. So, but one of the things, very important thing for An철수 would be that he should show himself. He should be capable of establishing his own identity. His problem is who he is. Actually, people have become to more and more will be curious to know about who he is, what he can do, and what he's capable of doing, as time comes nearby.
An's new party is going to presumably lean to the left. The DP perhaps could be suffering some losses because of that. What does this mean for the DP in the long run?
Well, I think it depends much on An철수 himself, because if he shows very firmly that what he wants to do, and who he is, and if he shows credibility as a political leader who is reliable and who will go all the way with you, then good people will come around with him. And that's a sort of movement, and then from that point on, the principle of gravity works. So if really good people come around him, and then they'll be really blow to the DP. But otherwise, if An철수 still remains just as he was, and still remains as ambiguous about what he wants to do and whether he will do in the near future, then it'll be, the DP will take advantage of that as well.
This is all leading us up to the local elections in June. What's at stake there?
Well, local election itself is a local election, actually. And then it's one of the elections. It's not a presidential one, but it will really serve as a harbinger and to the coming presidential election, even though it will come in the 3 to 4 years' time. But this is the moment whether, to test whether people will like Park Geun-hye's administration and people will keep supporting her policies that have been implemented so far, or people will try to find another answer to the current administration in the near future.
대선을 치른 지 1년이 되어가고 있습니다. 그런데 지금까지도 대립과 갈등이 계속되는 것에 대해 대통령으로서 매우 안타깝게 생각합니다. 새해 시작과 함께 경제 살리기와 민생을 위한 사업들이 차질 없이 추진될 수 있도록 제때 처리해 주실 것을 간곡히 부탁드립니다.
President Park Geun-hye has focused on stabilizing the livelihoods of the public, keeping her distance from the confrontation between the two rival parties. Extreme confrontation between the two parties might continue to stagnate politics. What kind of strategy should the president take to normalize the political landscape?
Now, President Park Geun-hye has largely remained on the sidelines while the two rival parties slug it out over these issues of contention. All of this political gridlock that we've seen over the past several weeks, how is it affecting her administration and what her administration is really trying to do?
Well, I think in the presidential office, or President Park Geun-hye had been deliberately trying to stay away from the national politics in the National Assembly. And it's not just herself. I mean, the former presidents did retain that kind of position as well, to shun himself or herself away from the everyday, day-to-day politics coming in, appearing in the National Assembly in Yeouido. But I think first, it creates an image that you're not actually communicating with the people. I mean, all the fuss or troubles or news, cover the newspapers, but there's no saying coming out of presidential office or the president. And you should consider the sort of cultural context in this country, that we have had a very strong presidential system. And then, I mean, everybody, whenever trouble comes in, everybody looks the mouth and the face of the president himself or herself. So I think in that sense, I think she should, I think this current administration and presidential office should be more outgoing and speaking to the people outside, and not just getting involved in everything. I mean, if the presidential office gets involved seems to be involved in everyday affairs of political struggle, then it'll be another points of fatigue for the people as well. So I think it requires wisdom not to be shown as a non-communicative person or something else.
What is your sense about what the public is feeling about all of this political gridlock that's taking place right now?
Well, I think informed people in this country have a great sense of crisis these days. I mean, in terms of diplomacy, and people are more increasingly concerned about Chinese advancement in the sea, and the Japanese political advancement toward the right-wing thing. So, and then North Korea is still a troublemaker. So, and also economy, and people are really concerned about the boosting about and when will be the time to buy the house, and when will be the time to make an investment. And then you see newspapers, and there's a lot of political struggles, and these people seem to not to pay any attention to the lives of the people. So people sort of, I think what I'm really worried about is sort of sense of indifference, and then the frustration. And that will really undermine the basic tenets of a democracy and the voting system. And another thing is, you may vote not out of your reason, but out of your emotions. And then that can also happen, and that will hurt the predictability of the political situation that will come. And this is the time. I see in China or in Japan, whether good or bad, it seems to be a policy direction. But here, what really counts for the coming future is the predictability and stability, and based upon which that we can build on better the advancement of this country. So I think that would be sort of common feelings or general feelings of the people in the street.
And if you're looking for a silver lining in all of this, you might find one in these four-way talks that we mentioned earlier. The rival parties did come to an agreement. They did normalize the National Assembly. Some are saying that these four-way talks should become a regular occurrence. Is that a good idea?
Well, I mean, it's not a good idea to, you have to make a decision among yourselves. And, and every constituent member of the National Assembly, they represent everyone. Every one of them represents actually some portion of the public, and which means they have to be on their own way. They have to be individual. They have to be creative. They have to make personal contributions to the National Assembly. But what happens is you cannot make a decision among yourselves, and so you establish a four-man or six-man, eight-man sort of committee, and leave all the difficult questions, thorny questions to them. And if they come up with some sort of solutions, you say no, objections, or you say yes. But it's not your personal opinion. So in principle, I don't think it's a really good idea. And then somehow and also the four-way talk and such a committee thing is not a really stable institution.
So the question then becomes, what is the best way to bridge that divide? If you had that perfect answer, of course, you may be in a different position. But what do you do? How do you get the parties together?
Well, I mean, for the time being, I think this sort of committee things would be the best, might be the best solution for solving the coming sort of budget problem or the imminent questions and answers and issues. And because, I mean, if you cannot really have an agreement in your family, then father or mother have to make a decision. And that is the right way. But in the long run, it will hurt sort of creativity and individual contribution aspect of the National Assembly.
And President Park Geun-hye's role in all of this, what can and should she be doing to help the process along?
Well, I think what really counts, in my view, is that Park Geun-hye should pay more attention to inner politics, because now we see challenges coming from China and Japan and all other countries, economics or security, everything. But this is time to be able to forge a consensus, a national consensus. This is time to pay more attention to the internal agreement, so that we can come up with, as a team in our quest for the challenge, recovering challenge coming from outside. So I think she should be more involved. She should be more involved, and she should speak directly to the people and go and address all the issues herself. I mean, that is the image I think she should show to the people, and that really she needs to have at this point.
The political landscape goes without saying, very complicated right now. We appreciate you, Professor Hong, coming on the show and providing your insights.
Well,
thank you very much.
It's entirely my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, After 10.